turn on my mic. We're glad to have you with us, and we ask you to please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Move to approve the agenda.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Is there any discussion? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and the agenda is approved. Item 1.4 is input from the public. This is a period devoted to comments by the general public, if any. In the interest of privacy and due process, the public is requested to not raise personnel issues except in a legally noticed closed personnel session of the board. Comments are limited to 3 consecutive minutes. A speaker's time may not be reserved, divided, apportioned, or deferred. No action may be taken upon a matter raised under this item of the agenda until the matter itself has been included specifically on an agenda as an item upon which action will be taken. I have several requests for public comment. The ones that are specific to an agenda item, we're going to take during that agenda item. And then Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you, President Dastrup, members of the board. For the record, my name is Lee Hoffman. I'm a resident of Elko. I am here tonight actually speaking on behalf of the Elko County Republican Party. I just wanted you all to know that I extended an invitation to Mr. Anderson, and he has graciously accepted an invitation to come to an event we're holding tomorrow evening at the County Commission chambers. It's a legislative session review. We have our legislators coming. We have representatives of the county and the city. And with Mr. Anderson's agreement to come, representation from the school district, really to just talk about how the session went and the impacts on our local entities and our local communities. So I just wanted to extend a public invitation and look forward to seeing Mr. Anderson and our mayor and so on tomorrow night to hear comments about the legislative session. So that's all. Thank you.
All right.
What time is that? Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Ask what time it starts.
I'm sorry. That wasn't a very good introduction, was it? I should have remembered to say that. 5:30, Elko County Commission chambers. We'll have some, because of the time of the day, we'll have some light food and beverage and so on. So everybody is welcome.
All right. Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a comment? All right. It looks like we got one more. Come on up.
Hello, for the record, I am Dr. Andre Ponder, the director of the Battleborn Youth Challenge Academy. And I just want to provide an update just to let the board know and the community know that we started our class this Saturday with 45 cadets. And I want to personally thank you for your support. Thank you for the collaboration as we move forward to educate our students in the state of Nevada and the community of Elko.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the last time you saw him, it was not Dr. Andre Ponder, but today it is. So congratulations,
Well, congratulations.
to Andre for that.
All right. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a comment before we move on? All right. We'll move on to item 2.1, discussion and possible acceptance of board goals. All right. We discussed this last board meeting. So now, and it was just basically a first reading. I will just open it up for discussion from the board.
I'm sure this is a minor change, but I think a significant change. I'd like to change in both goals the language that says increase the percentage by 3% to read 3 percentage points, as an increase of 3% off of 32% would not equal 35%. It's 3 percentage points. That would be for both, just as an example. But that would be for both goals, if I may.
All right. Any other discussion? Would you like to make that an official motion?
I'd be happy to make that as an official motion.
Okay.
Are you motioning to accept? I'm sorry, or is
I
it just for
apologize.
the change?
Just the
Just the
change.
change. Make
I'll
the
second
amendment.
your motion.
All right. I started to worry.
All right. Is there any discussion about that change? All right. All in favor of changing that language, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and we will update that language. Is there any other discussion on the goals?
I'm chair, move to accept the goals as presented.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the motion carries. Item 2.2 is receipt, review, and possible approval of ECSD governance manual. This is for possible action. Mr.
Go-
Anderson, would
go
you like to give a
intro that.
little intro? Yeah.
Okay, yeah, sure.
ahead.
So back in November at the NASB, Nevada Association of School Boards Conference in November in Lake Tahoe. We were all there, and the concept of probably a good idea to have some sort of governance manual, both for refreshers on the roles and responsibilities of a board member for people who are currently sitting, and then also a nice little intro to hand to someone when they're a new board member as well. It was kind of a best practices type of suggestion from some of our presenters there. So we got to work on that, and then things got busy and it got pushed back, and then we kind of went back to finalizing some things. It's a version that started with another district, and we did some adaptations to how we do things, and so what you see before you is kind of a product of my efforts. Teresa's, Cassie certainly helped a lot. Our legal counsel chiming in on certain things, and it's just a good resource for our board members to both be acquainted with their role and be reminded of responsibilities of board members. So there's a lot in there, but that's how we came to where we are now. And from here, I think it's probably your discussion.
All right, any questions or discussion from the board?
Madam Chair, if I may, if we accept this as a document, I'm assuming then every time there's a change to anything in the document, it's going to come back before the board for additional changes. If I'm mistaken on that, then please correct me. But if I'm correct in that, is there a simpler way to do this?
I think in the motion, if you're looking at things like, the current
Principles
board members or
yeah.
principals, I think in the motion, we can say that it can be updated with current staff, maybe, however you want to word that. But yeah, I do understand that we don't want to have to bring this back every time to say, oh, now we're going to edit this manual or update this manual. So I think in the motion, it would be easiest if we just go ahead and make that part of the motion.
I wanted to add to, I've had a chance just to look through it very quickly, but that's part of the issue I'm having is that we didn't see it until yesterday afternoon. And I would personally, I'd like to ask for some more time to look it over. It looks good as far as I can tell, but again, I haven't had a chance to do anything other than
Been on the agenda since Friday.
since Friday, because I didn't get the, yeah. So when I initially got the agenda on Thursday, it wasn't on there, and I didn't see any updated changes come through until Monday. So I didn't see it go, it got added without a notification then. But regardless, like say, I haven't looked at it since yet. When I saw it change yesterday, then I looked at it. But I'd like the opportunity maybe to look for it, look at it a little more in depth.
All right, any discussion from the board on that? I will just remind you, this is not a policy. It is basically, it's just a manual. It's a guidance document for current board members and future board members. And just like anything else that we discuss as a board, it can be brought back at any time. Anyway, open it up for further discussion or questions.
Okay, so after reading over it, I think it's a great start. I think as a new board member, there's a lot of information in it that I feel like it's missing a lot of information. I think it still needs. especially for someone that's just coming in that's new. I have kind of a huge list of things. So if we could take more time to maybe go over it and submit some ideas of things that we think we need to include in it, just for future board members to be able to look at, because this is something that I wished I'd have had when I joined the board. But I think there's a lot of things in there that, or a lot of things missing that need to be in there.
All right. Any other thoughts?
Such as?
Such as, I think it would be really good to have like an annual school board calendar and work, like a work plan, so that people coming, like board members coming in, they would know like this is the time of year you vote on buyouts. This is when you appoint board members to committees and elect officers. This is when we evaluate the superintendent, just so that you kind of know a list of things that are coming up. You can kind of have a brief overview of the year and what's usually happens at certain times in the year. I think, let's see, there are some acronyms that I would add in. I would add in the superintendent's evaluation form, because when we evaluated you, I would like to have that information, or would have liked to have had that information right off the get-go as a board member, so that I could see this is what I'm going to be evaluating you on. So that throughout the year, and as I was serving on the board, I kind of could take note of how you were doing in those areas. So I think that should be included. I think more information on the school board member responsibilities. When I was running, I got on the Elko County School District website, and there was like a little, I can't even remember what it was called, but it was like the responsibilities of a board member and the responsibilities of a superintendent. And I think there's a lot of great information on that little deal that I went through that could be included in this manual. I think that there could be a list of things that we like agree to do. So kind of like a code of conduct between board members, being respectful of each other's ideas and opinions, that sort of thing. I don't know. Okay, and so then the other thing that I was thinking of is, since this is, or that I saw on there that I kind of question, is if this is available to the public at all. My personal cell phone number is listed on there under my name, and I don't know that I really love that either.
We took those off. Yeah.
It's not anymore.
No,
Okay.
those were, yeah, there was they were briefly there in public, and then we moved it to admin content, and then we just removed it entirely from the manual and put it back in public. So,
Okay.
yeah, that's all gone.
Anyways, but I don't know if we could have like a board workshop on this and bring ideas forward, or just even send them into Cassie, send our ideas into Cassie. But I think that there need to be some things added to it. I've got quite a few ideas of things that I would like added to it. Oh, one other thing was like all the different committees and stuff that we were on when we went to elect officers and appoint people to committees earlier in the year. As a new board member, it was hard to know, okay, what does this committee do? So like, what are they charged with? Who's on the board? Who serves on this board? A better explanation of each of those different committees and what they're responsible for.
All right, I think those are, excuse me, those are all good suggestions. And right now we can go ahead and I think forward suggestions to Cassie. And we can bring this back with additional information put in it. I think some of those things like the video you referenced, Brooke, could probably just be listed in the manual with a link, so that we don't have to make this manual, nobody's going to read a 200-page manual. When you get on the board, you've got a lot on your mind, and having a manual handed to you that's, this thick isn't going to be helpful. So I think if we can add some of those things, because I think it's great to have clarification. I know when I got on the board, I was the only one who hadn't served at least 10 years. And I was very much a junior board member. And I didn't get any information except, hi, sit down, let's start the meeting, basically. And then of course I had lots of visits with people, but I think we want to keep this fairly brief, but I do think it's important that we add a few more details if that's important to the board. So my suggestion, and this is the will of the board, is that we send any other additional information you'd like added to Cassie, and then we can bring this back at our next meeting. That gives everybody else a little more time to send in thoughts, look at what's already here, and then we can move on from there. Are there any other suggestions or recommendations from the board?
Yes. So my suggestion was just to make it simpler. So rather than you having to update constantly, just put the link on there and then you can send it as a PDF. They can click on that and then you don't have to worry about what's updated, specifically where to find it with the new app that we have. We need to take away from the superintendent report, but with the new app that we have, you could just find it on the Elko County School District app. And all the information's there. So the contact information is there. So yeah, so those types of things that need to be updated, the NRS, link to an NRS, those types of things, rather than have the actual document that you have to constantly update.
Yeah, the document's like twice the size it probably needs to be just because every NRS is included in its
Yeah,
entirety.
no, it's great to look at.
Yeah.
Yep, but just put the links and then we'll click on them and live in the digital age.
All right, any other suggestions? All right, we don't need a formal motion unless the board wishes to make one. We can just send stuff to Cassie and we can bring it back at the next meeting. Is everyone in agreement with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great, awesome. Okay, let's go ahead and, is there anything else on that before we move to 2.3? All right, we'll move to item 2.3, receipt, review, and possible approval of a memorandum of understanding between Elko County School District and Boys and Girls Club of Elko, Inc. This is for possible approval.
Yeah, so this is just it's kind of a formalization of some work that's been going on for the last, say a good 4 years or so with maybe 3 to 4 years with the Boys and Girls Club and specifically with Southside. Southside Elementary is one of several schools that participate and benefit from the 21st Century Grant. And part of what they do in conjunction with the Boys and Girls Club is provide outside of school opportunities for their students. And this MOU is essentially for the district to pay them $5,000 for the school year. And that is for just supplies and things like that. And they take care of the kids. They provide us with data to track because when we participate in that grant, you have to have data that you share on how things are going and how the kids are benefiting and how the funds are being used. And so it's a formalization of a good partnership with the Boys and Girls Club.
All right, any questions from the board? How would you like to proceed?
Madam Chair, move to accept the memorandum of understanding between Elko County School District and Boys and Girls Club of Elko, Inc.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
No.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the motion carries. Item 2.4 is receipt, review, and possible approval of guidance on the 5-year capital improvement plan pursuant to NRS 354.5945.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
So this is one of those yearly things that we do obviously every year. So this capital improvement plan is the product of, we've had a couple of capital improvement plan committee meetings, including county and city officials from most of our communities. Brooke is our board member that's on there, and lots of help from Julie and Stephen and other people at central office. But every year we give a 5-year plan, and it's based on funds that are available and based on project needs that exist. From year to year, you'll see some things that are pretty much the exact same, and then you'll see some things disappear, and you'll see some things show back up based on new as the information changes, the output changes. And so obviously over the course of this year, we had an MGT report that we had to now consider. We had public input to consider. We had a whole new committee that we didn't have before to consider. And so the template also changed. The one you would have seen last year was a 1-pager, and all we had was pay-as-you-go funds. And so That was the extent of what existed at that time. So what you see now is a little more, it's not necessarily complex, but there's just more there. It has to be broken out by funding sources. And so we actually had 5 funding sources to consider. The first of those is the remainder of pay-as-you-go money. And that's that kind of the whole first page is all pay-as-you-go money that remains. And we project that out for those projects. And that is what you see there. A lot of those projects that are there are ones that you already have been made aware of. And then a couple of new ones from a pretty harsh winter on a couple of our buildings. And so that is why a couple of things that you've seen before are not there anymore, and a couple of new things might be there. And these were all projects that were run by our capital improvement committee and were recognized as pretty important needs. The second funding source is somewhat theoretical, but our best guess of things right now, and we called it the AB 519 Capital Improvement Fund, and we had to make some assumptions. I mean, this document is due to the county. Is it the debt commission? Is that the name of the committee's eluding me at this point? Yeah, it's the county debt commission, right? I think, yeah. So we have to have that turned into them by August 1st. And so we have to make some assumptions, because obviously we won't know what that tax rate is, because AB 519 gives them all the way until June 30th of 2024 to make that determination. So based on conversations and just assumptions, so we can have something to present on a 5-year scale. That's why you see absolutely nothing in the FY24 and FY25 columns, because there are no matter if they levied 1 cent or 25 cents, none of that comes in until FY26 anyway. So those are empty, and we make some assumptions based on, again, we don't even know what 25 cents would represent, but we make our best guesses. And so that's where that comes from. The next category for funding is the AB 519 New Owyhee School. As you know, section 10 of AB 519 appropriated $64.5 million to the building of a new school in the Owyhee area. And those numbers that you see for the next 3 years those are best guesses as to how much we would spend each year. Those numbers will obviously, who knows what that's going to look like, but those 3 numbers add up to $64.5 million. And the next fund is funding source is simply listed as federal funds. These are this is for our school violence prevention project in conjunction. So that's with grant money from the COPS grant, donation from NGM, and donation from West Wendover, City of West Wendover, for the camera installation, secure digital entries, all those safety upgrades we've talked about at previous meetings and recognized. So that's what that one's about. And then the last one is our building and sites fund, which we keep for kind of emergency needs. And so that is the layout of our capital improvement plan. So for those of you who this is kind of your first time going through this, the immediately succeeding year is going to be pretty accurate as to what projects you're going to be working on. The next year out is also pretty accurate. And then there's a lot of projecting that goes on from there, and those needs do change as I said, as the data changes. So Stephen is here if you have questions about specific projects, but this is the capital improvement plan we intend to present to the debt commission. And we have another meeting next week with our capital improvement committee, and we'll continue to seek their input on these projects.
All right, questions from the board?
Madam Chair, if I may. Thank you, CJ. On page 2, under the AB 519 Capital Improvement Fund, under FY26-7, it says assuming match. Is that the district match, or is that a match from other pending legislation and or?
Yeah, so that's referring, thank you for the question. That's referring to, I can't remember which section of the bill. It's either 4 or 5. But there's language in there that the state has a rural capital improvement assistance fund or something along those lines. And districts are allowed to levy, are allowed to apply for matching funds with the additional tax rate that they're allowed to levy for the purpose of capital improvement for schools. So should our district be in a position to levy, for example, or benefit from a 25-cent tax rate, for example, under this new bill, then that money could then be applied to match that. And so thinking about how we could make the most out of that and making sure that that opportunity is known to county and city officials. We're hoping that if we were to have the 25 cents and projecting maybe a positive scenario where we then request that fund to match what we get from those 25 cents, then that would double that money and increase our ability to do more. So that's what, when it says assuming match, that's what it's talking about. It's very contingent on someone approving our application though. So, yeah.
All right, other questions from the board? How would you like to proceed?
Madam Chair, move to approve the 5-year capital improvement plan pursuant to NRS 354.5945.
Thank you. Do we have a second? All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the motion carries. Item 2.5 is receipt, review, and possible approval of policy GBB21, outside employment, all employees for possible action. All right, we've seen this one before. Mr. Anderson, you have any more intro for us on this one?
I have none. To my best recollection, I received no feedback on it at the first reading, nor have I received any feedback from board members or any public comment on it. So I have nothing else to add.
I move to approve JBB 2.1.
Thank you.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the motion carries. Item 2.6 is receipt, review, and possible approval of policy JGG, student welfare, suicide prevention. This is for possible action. All right, Mr. Anderson.
Did you have public comment for this one?
Yes, we do have some public comment. I'll just,
Does that go first or do
we can, let's discuss
Okay.
first and then we'll have public comment
Awesome.
as part of that in just a minute.
Okay, so this was presented first. I think it was the first meeting in June, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, that sound right? I think so. And then so the first iteration that we saw was basically just word for word, the state's model policy for suicide prevention. We then met, so we means me and Paul, met with our lead social worker, our sergeant of the SROs, our chief nurse, communication specialist, and Michelle Sandoval, to come up with some proposed edits to kind of personalize it to Elko County a little more. Then at the second board meeting in June, we had a presentation from Zero Suicides and other partners, and share their opinion and views on the policy, ways it could be tailored to meet Elko County's needs. Following that presentation, Paul and I then met with both Lynette and Lori, who are here with us today. They had some wonderful suggestions to further enhance the personalization of it. And the red line version that you see now is kind of a compilation of not everything that was suggested by everybody, but many of those things that were proposed are in there in that fashion and at this time. And yeah, thank everyone for their input and participating in this. I mean, that's a good example of school community. We have a lot of people that put their heads together to put this one before you today. So thank you to everyone who's participated this far. And I can answer questions, but I know we have public comment as well.
Thank you. We will go ahead and take public comment and then we will have discussion from the board. So Lori, Lesbo, unless we want to. Okay, Lynette. All right.
All right, for the record, my name's Lynette Vega. I'm with Zero Suicides, Elko County. And thank you for letting us take the time to make a public comment. And I also want to thank CJ and also Paul Allen for letting us come and talk with you guys also. So I just want to skip over, I don't know if you guys got the document in front of you, but on number 5, interventions, assessment and referral, towards the bottom of that paragraph, says if there is no mental health professional available, a designated staff member, school nurse or administrator shall address the situation according to district protocol until a mental health professional is brought in. So I was just wondering if there's going to be a flow chart and where this, so this protocol is that we can look at. The next one I was going to talk about is number 6 on parental notifications and involvement. And it's towards the end of that paragraph also, following parental notifications and based on initial risk assessment. I was wondering what the risk assessment will be used, if it's going to be the Columbia or something else. And then on number 7, for the re-entry procedure, I'll read that first paragraph at the top. It says, for students returning to school after mental health crisis, suicide attempt, or psychiatric hospitalization, whenever possible, a school employed mental health professional, the principal or designees shall meet with the student's parent or guardian. I was just wondering who that mental health professional would be, that school employed. On B, on number 7, re-entry procedure, B, while not a requirement for re-entry, the school may coordinate with the hospital and any external mental health providers to assess the student for readiness to return to school. This is a recommendation of putting into a 504 of having the student return to school. And then number 10, after a suicide death, letter A, development and implementation of a crisis response plan. The crisis response team led by a designated crisis response coordinator. I was wondering who that person is. And then over to action steps on B. Towards the bottom there, the last part of the paragraph, the staff may also use the opportunity to talk with students about suicide. But what needs to be added in there is using non-judgmental language. Also on step 3, share information, where it says in the middle of that paragraph, towards the top, the statement shall include the basic facts of the death and known funeral arrangements without providing details of the suicide method. Just telling just letting people know that they died by suicide is enough, but they don't need to know the method. So that should be taken out. Step 4 on the last paragraph says, for those school personnel who are concerned about talking about suicide may contribute to contagion. It has been clearly demonstrated through research that talking about mental health and suicide in a non-judgmental, open way that encourages dialogue and help seeking does not elevate risk. So if a staff member cannot talk with their students non-judgmentally, then we need to get a staff member in there that can. And that is all I have. And I appreciate you listening and thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Anderson, do you have any responses to any of those, since you've been in a lot of these discussions?
Yeah, I thank you again. That is the second time I've heard all of those same suggestions, and they intentionally were not included in the manner that was suggested. So I can speak to any of those individually if you'd like me to, but I appreciate that input.
Okay. Any thoughts on that or questions from the board on that? We'll go ahead and go to Lori Lesbo for public comment. She's got it all? Okay. Okay.
Got it all in.
All right. Well, then at this point, we'll open it up to discussion from the board.
So I have one, page 7. Just curious. So we've removed or primary care. Are we getting in between somebody's primary care physician and a mental health? If this child or this student doesn't have a mental health, are we getting in between that? And why is the district going to be getting in the middle of somebody's healthcare?
The concept there was that we feel like the best thing we can do is when someone is clearly in a mental health crisis is to refer them to a specific mental health professional as opposed to just a doctor who could also probably re-refer them, but I don't know, that it seemed less direct than just making sure that and I don't know, let me rephrase it. It seemed like the most responsible thing just to get them directly to a mental health care provider as opposed to going through someone else.
Okay, not disagreeing. What about parental refusal? So then what are we doing with parental refusal then?
Is there, sorry,
Well,
is
most of
that
this
in the same
verbiage,
area?
well, most
or-
of this verbiage, limits our staff to doing these things.
Yeah.
And even as you go into page 14, there's another one. Let's see. When they come, so this is school employed mental health professionals provide ongoing and long-term support to students impacted by the death of a student as needed, no fewer than 3 months. So again, we will provide this, but my question is, then what do we have in regards to parental refusal? I mean, these are still their children, right? So is this just what our guidance is? And do we have anything outside of that?
Yeah, I mean, whether it's with suicide or other emergencies, I don't think we're in a position to force people to go to any sort of doctor, right? Like people love to talk about having choice, and we will do our due diligence to make sure they are referred, that someone knows that they're in need of those services, but short of putting them all in our own car and driving them there ourselves and walking their hands into the door. We make those, we provide the resources, redirect them, let them know about the urgency, but I don't know, I see it sometimes, obviously totally different scenarios, but a similar concept of if a kid, has a concussion or something, we can tell the parent, you need to take this kid to the doctor. But if they decide just to go home, then they decide to go home.
Okay.
They need to take care of their kid, and we'll redirect them to all the resources we know of.
So are we prepared then to work with hospitals in Salt Lake City, Twin Falls then? Because mental health facilities here are not, and even the hospitals, I believe it was just reported that those are for adults and seniors on the third floor there. So do we
the
have,
behavioral health
so
wing or whatever.
So are we prepared to work those angles too as well, I guess is my question.
So we're working on expanding that. Thanks to our conversations with Zero Suicides. We do have a pretty good list of resources we can refer them to here in town, but recognizing that sometimes wait times can be significant. We're also working on trying to, so we have a partnership with UNLV with telehealth counseling, and we're actively looking into funding sources to help us with companies such as Daybreak Health or Care Solace, who are companies that specialize in providing people with quick response time, even if it's virtual. I mean, as far as referring them to places in Salt Lake, that sort of thing, I mean, where does it stop? How many cities out do you go before, like?
I guess my thing is what this makes it sound like we are going to refer to some, at least I'm reading that we're going to refer to these.
I think,
is it going to be based on the site coordinator then, basically? Are we going to have, what I don't want to do is set us up for referrals, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to set us up as a practitioner. I can have my own referral source, right? I can say, hey.
Yeah. Can I jump in real quick?
Go for it.
I was just thinking to myself, he's talking about referrals as a doctor. And we're not talking about it that way.
Yeah.
For me referring you to someone is saying, here is a list of resources. These are the people, this is who you can go to for this. This is, and I have no authority to write like a referral to a doctor type of thing, right? I'm not one practitioner referring to another. I'm a I'm a coordinator or something that's letting you know what the resources are, and I'm telling you that these are the places you need to go. And that's the type of referral I think that's talking about.
Okay.
And when I say it's not going to be me.
Just in general,
It's going to
yeah.
be a mental health professional who's making those, a school mental health professional who's making those recommendations. Maybe recommendation is a better word than referral.
We might change that, actually, now that I think about it. I literally didn't think about that till you said that.
Yeah.
Just that
Semantics of the word referral in the medical world versus non-medical.
They carry weight.
They do.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
I'd like to echo Dr. Byers' concern specifically for that portion of section 5B4 on page 7. And I think we restore primary care. Specifically because Elko County has such a limited amount of mental health. I would rather be able to say that, I mean, if we're saying your child, if we are, recommending your child see someone, I'd rather they see someone that's professional versus, well, it's going to be 6 months before we can get them into, and that's an exaggeration. I get that. But my point being, having them see someone locally, or at least whatever their choice of whoever their primary care is, I think is important. And I think by this board specifically striking that, we're almost indicating that we don't value where primary care fits in overall. And I get primary care is not mental health. However, it's primary care for a reason. And I think in striking this, we're starting to get into a subject that I don't know that we have the authority to get into. So I would like to see that portion specifically restored. And I appreciate what you said, CJ. I'd like to give them more options than fewer. And I'd rather see, like I said, I don't want to keep beating a dead horse. But that's my thought.
Right, other thoughts or questions from the board?
I disagree with what Matt just said. There's a whole list of providers there. Because to me, the primary care is going to refer them to any one of those because they're not equipped to handle that. But that's just my opinion. I think leaving it out is fine. I do agree with Dr. Byers with the way the word referral is, if we could change that wording. Because it does sound like we're making the doctors refer, like we need a little note or something. I think providing them resources is what we're looking at. I do have a question that Dr. Byers brought up. And you had mentioned also, Mr. Anderson, like with someone with a concussion, do they sign a waiver saying, yeah, we know, but we're not taking to the doctor? Does that make, because I don't know how that works. So would the same thing work with something like this if we give them a list? I'm not sure. Do we need something that says, thank you?
Yeah, I'm in receipt of these recommendations and I recognize it's my responsibility now. Cody, Paul, two have been involved in athletics. Is there anything like that when someone gets hurt in athletics and you tell them, hey, you need to go take your kid to the doctor? Like, do they acknowledge anything like that, or is it just?
They can't come back to participate until they have evidence that they're going to the doctor.
Okay, so there isn't something when they go, but when you come back, you have to have something that shows you follow through.
They can obviously choose not to go see the doctor and clear, but we can't allow them to play because that's an IAA policy. They got to get cleared by their doctor, and that's the impact.
Yes, the problem with thank you. The problem with translating that concept to here is, one, we're excluding them in that situation from athletics. And this one, we'd be denying them access to education if we just said you can't come back until you have it. So that's a significant difference from those two situations.
Thank you, Susan. You're right. We do have some resources in Elko. We've just heard for years that we don't have enough. And this, I think, is a perfect example of the referral word that we're looking for from a medical side. I think a referral from a primary to a mental health professional, again, carries more weight than what we're doing because we're not medical professionals. I would stand behind keeping primary in there because there's no reason to remove them that I've heard yet. That's for me, important.
All right, other questions or discussion from the board?
I'm sure move to amend the, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, I'd like to thank everybody who has participated in this process. And I know I don't have a whole lot to offer on this, and it is because I trust the system that we have set up here and the professionals that we have looking at it. And I've seen the process again working, how we've been able to meet with the community and with all the stakeholders and seeing these things come together. So I'm generally happy with the document we have presented here. I know a lot of work's gone into it. And I just want to say thank you that has worked hard on that.
Matt, just before you make your motion, it's worth mentioning that in that same paragraph, the one about the primary care provider, I mean, it starts out with may include, but is not limited to. So I mean, there's really, infinites probably, it's an exaggeration, but there are many things that could be done. And it's, so I guess this wouldn't preclude you from being able to do that, but I think it just kind of removes it as the most desirable option, maybe, or the first option. So not limited to, there's a lot of directions you could go with that.
Sure. And I recognize that as well. And that was one of the things that I was hesitant on. Since the state document has this,
Yep.
We're taking a formal action to remove that. That's where I have the biggest concern is that we're saying as a board, we don't value primary care in that capacity for this purpose. And I don't think that's our position to take. Therefore, I'll just put it up there and we'll see where the board goes.
Can I speak really quick
Please.
to just a couple things? Okay, I, on page 5-6, sorry, I wasn't quick enough to say something before. I was trying to give everybody a chance. Let's see, I need to find where I'm at here. Under prevention B, I think. Staff professional development.
Yep.
I think at the bottom of that, because it talks about, let's see. All staff members shall, or no, wait, I'm on the wrong one. Additional professional development in suicide risk assessment and crisis intervention shall be provided to school employed mental health professionals and school nurses. Above that, it talks about how all staff will receive at minimum an annual professional development on risk factors, warning signs, and all of that. And then at the bottom, it talks about how additional professional development in suicide risk assessment and crisis intervention shall be provided to school employed mental health professionals and school nurses. I think maybe we need to also add in on that one, the district suicide prevention coordinator needs to be included in that. Because I think from asking questions earlier, who you're referring to when you talk about the mental health professionals, school employed mental health professionals, that would be your counselors, school psychologists, social workers, things like that. So is the district suicide prevention coordinator considered one of those mental health professionals? And if not, should we list them in the bottom of that? So additional professional development in suicide risk assessment and crisis intervention shall be provided to the school employed mental health professionals, school nurses, and district suicide prevention coordinator. Because if they're coordinating everything and running everything, I think they need that additional professional development.
Yeah, so this is a point of contention that I've had with a few people. I think we're viewing what this position does very differently. And, without being too, puff my chest out, like I get to pick what that job does. And that job is going to be someone who coordinates resources and puts the right people in place to handle stuff. Like, for example, if I'm a incident command person in a natural disaster, I'm not qualified to do a lot of things, but what I am qualified to do is direct resources and put people in the right place. And I can oversee the processes that are going on. So I could be a district suicide prevention coordinator, whatever the title is. And I could never conduct a risk assessment myself. I could never do a crisis intervention myself, because what I'm doing is I'm mobilizing my social workers to do those things. I'm mobilizing my school psychs. I am directing the resources where they need to go, and I'm coordinating that effort from a higher kind of perspective than the boots on the ground at the school. And so when we get into the nitty gritty of what kind of training that person has, what that person has is training on how to manage situations and crises and make sure the right people and the right resources are put in the right places. Very rarely, I would say, is that person going to be in a room with kids, with bereaved individuals, that sort of thing, handling those. They're going to be directing resources to those people and making sure those go where they need to go. So it's like a fundamental difference of how I see that position from other people. And that's why some of those recommendations have kind of just put to the side, because that's not how I see that position going.
Okay. My next question is on C. So right below that, youth suicide prevention programming. It says developmentally appropriate student-centered education materials shall be integrated into the curriculum of all K through 12 health classes and other classes as appropriate. The content of these age-appropriate materials shall include the importance of safe and healthy choices and coping strategies focused on resiliency building. It keeps going on. My only question is the curriculum that was presented to us before, there was a bunch of different counseling curriculums for the lower grades.
Yeah.
One of the notes that was made in the red line document that these ladies provided to us was they just asked, is there any kind of educational curriculum in place right now that teaches resilience during, what did they say? Resilience during difficult times and stuff like that. So I was just wondering, I don't think that there's anything in place right now at that age, K through 6th grade. And would the counseling that we're going to end up choosing in a while, is that something that has gone over in each of those different?
Yeah, I can speak to that.
Oh, okay.
So,
Or let's wait. I think our microphones actually may be working from all around the room. Oh, they're not? That's a shame. All right. To the microphone.
so this came up this morning during our, what do we call our Tuesday meeting, cabinet meeting? And Candace, when we went back to the office, we sat down and talked, and we looked through, I guess, the modules, and there wasn't anything specific to suicide, but it was all that kind of stuff, how to be resilient, how to be positive, how to deal. So I'm pretty sure it does contain those things. It may not be specific to suicide, but it is, building self-confidence, learning how to deal with bad situations, learn how to control your emotions and those kind of things. So I think there would be something in that.
Okay,
Yeah.
which I'm not an expert on suicide, but I'm assuming at that age, K through 6th grade, that's probably the things that you want to go over at that age. Yeah, okay.
And on that same point, we're setting up the Safe Talk training for all of our employees. And when I met with the state, they encouraged us to not do Safe Talk K6. There's another program that's called Suicide Prevention 101 or something that is more geared towards those younger kids. And I think it would include a lot of that stuff too. That's just building those positive habits so you don't get in that situation as you get older.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Allen. Have you got more, Brooke?
Nope, I think
Okay.
that was it.
All right, other questions?
Nope.
Before we-
I have another, has the lawyer looked all of this over too? Does any of this leave the district liable for anything or in an awkward position?
The last person to do anything with this was Mr. Salyer. So,
Okay.
yep.
And I just want to say too, that there were questions asked about why some of the suggestions weren't included in the policy, and the answers that I feel like I got from the superintendent explained to me why they were left out. And I think it's appropriate to leave lots of those out, or some of those out, just because of the way certain things are handled. So.
And there were a lot of things in the document that they provided that aren't things that I would necessarily put in a policy, but there are certainly items of knowledge to use in our practice and that sort of thing, but
Yes.
not something I would formalize in policy.
Right.
Just
And
as someone
that's what
who has to deal with policy a lot.
that's what I appreciated too. I thought they
Yeah.
were a lot of really good ideas for
Yep.
practice.
Yep.
Yeah, but maybe not to be included in policy. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that there are procedures and practices that take place that aren't specifically outlined in policy, and that provides our educational professionals the opportunity to mitigate, to manage, to handle situations as needed with policy as guidance, but procedures are sometimes, procedures don't need to all be outlined. So I think that's a good thing to remember anytime we're building a policy, this policy or any other policy. We don't outline every procedure in practice.
Is there going to be like a procedure or not the policy part, like a procedural manual? Or will people just,
There will be a plan that goes in conjunction. There's a plan that's referenced in here,
okay.
and
So I'm working on
like
that
to
right
talk,
now.
Paul?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I'm working on that right now. And what I've done is I've reached out to some other districts and to the people at the state to see what they have. I got some stuff from Washoe that looks really good. So I'm waiting for some of our employees to get back on the clock, and we're going to sit down and meet and hammer through that. And I'm hoping to have something done sometime first semester and have out to everybody. And it had training documents. There's a bunch of stuff. So I think it's going to be really useful for this.
And I would just like to thank everyone too that had a part in putting all of this
absolutely.
together, and appreciate your comments. And I would have you contact Superintendent Anderson if you want more specific answers to why things aren't in here. Just so that you don't, I want you to feel like your comments can be answered later.
Yep.
All right, any other discussion from the board?
Thank you, ladies and everybody else. I do appreciate that. On section 5B4 on page 7, I acknowledge and accept that some, perhaps most primary care personnel do not have training in psychiatric medications, but removing them has a number of issues. Number one, there may be some who have taken such training. Number two, seeing any medical professional is better than seeing no one if there's not an immediate outpatient mental health appointment availability. And three, I don't feel this board is qualified to dictate medical professionals' qualifications or to remove parental choice. Therefore, I move that section 5B4 have the words primary care restored.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Should we, do you want to amend that to add to change the referral? Or you want to do that separately?
I didn't want to have the issue muddied, and I wanted to leave that separate so that if one passes or dies on its own merit.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor of adding or primary care back to the document, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
Nay.
Nay.
Chair votes aye, and that will be added back into the document. Is there any other discussion?
Dr. Byers, are you able to make the verbiage change that would best fit what you feel is appropriate for
It would
that?
just be the change of referral to recommendation. It's also, that was section 5. Yeah. So I want to make a motion. I would like to make a motion 5B part 4, rather than saying referral, change that to recommendation. So urgent recommendation may include.
Could I make a suggestion before you make a full on?
I'll pause
motion?
that.
There's a decent chance that there may be somewhere else in the document where the word referral might need to be changed to recommendation. And there also could be places where the word referral might be the exact right where we need. So maybe something that gives latitude to us to find locations in the document where referral should be changed to recommendation, and based on me and our lawyer having.
Okay.
discretion.
Like to
on where
change
we
that,
do
Madam
it.
President.
You don't have to do that. I'm just,
No, I
there could
fully-
just be somewhere
no,
else.
I
And if you
fully-
specify it to
There's
that area,
one other spot in there, isn't there's one? No.
there might,
There
There
are,
might be.
there are 18 references to
18
refer,
references.
10 references to referral included within those 18. So.
Maybe we should just bring it back.
I
Honestly,
would like to get this done.
but next time it'll be easier because it'll just be those changes.
Well, I think it would, you haven't officially made your complete motions and we don't
Yeah.
have a second yet, but I think it's totally appropriate to trust our staff to go through and recognize when referral might mean something medical and when a recommendation would be, this is an educational, recommendation. This is a recommendation we're making to a family. So I think we can trust our staff and our legal counsel to make that correction. And if not, everyone can look at the policy and we can bring it back at a later date if necessary. That's my thought and recommendation,
not referral.
not my referral. All right, Dr. Byers, would you like to continue?
Sorry, man.
So we're talking about just tabling this then.
Or leaving I would
Want
like
me
to
to
see it
make a
pass this
motion?
evening. But
With giving them latitude to change referral to it. That's what you're, okay.
That's
I'm
what
just
I'm
trying to
asking you.
understand.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you for asking.
I'm just trying to clarify.
clarifying
That's all. I don't do what I want.
question. You may, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Okay, so make a motion. Make a motion to allow for the change of referral through the document and recommendation based on, I don't, you know what I can't-
intent,
based on the intent of verbiage. I don't like this at all, actually. So
if
I
if I may suggest, a potential motion
you know
could
what,
be.
I'll just I'll just take, can I just like stop? What's the official verbiage for me to just say, I'm not making a motion?
You're good. We'll just let
I'm
Matt
out.
go.
Yeah, I'm out. Like
Take backs.
take backs.
Madam Chair, if I may, I motion to approve policy JGG, student welfare suicide prevention, with the caveat that staff review references to refer and referral and make the necessary changes based on intent.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
That was a really good motion.
That was really good.
Okay, is there any other discussion? All right, seeing none. All in favor, please say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Chair votes aye and the motion carries. And again, just thank you to everyone who contributed to this. Thank you to the staff for the time that was spent. And we know this is a big issue we'll continue to need to collaborate on as a community and as a district. All right, we'll move to item 2.7, receipt, review, and possible acceptance of the bid for the FY24 asphalt maintenance project. 7 district-wide sites. Elko, Nevada, submitted by Superior Services, Inc., and conditional award of contract to that bidder. Stephen.
Yeah, so we had a sealed bid and Superior Services had the lowest bid and best bid for that project. Specifically, not the sites in general, but it's close to about 700,000 square feet of asphalt that is being resealed and repainted. So any questions on the project or?
All right, questions from the board?
I thought Jeff would ask how much it would be without lines, so I was just waiting.
No, we've been through that. I do have some questions. It's probably more towards the next item, but
That was funny.
I will remark that the difference in bids to me is interesting, being $80,000, that was 20% less.
Yeah, and that's something we consider too, when there is like a discrepancy like that. CR Contractors is not from Elko, Nevada, so they would have their labor rates for lodging and things like that might be different. When those contractors actually buy the material, some contractors buy it, like spot price beforehand. Those are things we don't really know, but based off of the numbers that I had given you earlier, They were both in the ballpark. Superior Services was pretty close.
And we had budgeted 400, correct?
400. Yeah,
Okay. And were those the only two bids received?
they were.
Okay.
All right, any other questions or discussion from the board?
I guess I'll hit it now. It also is in relation to the next item, but I'll just go ahead and ask. I remember a year or two, well, it was last summer, I believe. We did the parking lot at Spring Creek, and in addition, there were repairs. And I was wondering if is there anything like that in this one? Because with the next item coming back, those repairs didn't necessarily work too good. Or I was going to ask you about that, and if there's anything we need to be doing to keep us from a situation where, if I remember correctly, about $50,000 of that previous bid was spent to redo the entrance of Spring Creek, and then
It wasn't necessarily the entrance. There was some pothole repair
Right.
that was done at Spring Creek High School. The next item on the list didn't have anything to do with us. Doesn't really have anything to do with the top ceiling. It's something that's coming from underneath.
right.
And the next thing I'll go over that too.
Yeah,
How we're
I
gonna-
probably should have waited to the next item
Yeah.
on that, but
No, I see your concerns though. We did Spring Creek High School and Spring Creek Complex last year, and we had some
and,
failures.
yeah, and now we're looking at another $250,000
Right.
at it. So I just was curious about that situation
Yep.
and if they were in related areas, or if there's any of those types of repairs going forward in this particular bid. And if it's something we need to look at, that maybe we do need to do more or whatever to prevent what's happening now.
Yeah.
That's where my basis of my
This-
question is coming from.
No, specifically this bid, we had the contractors go out to each site, identify what areas are in trouble. And then there was another one that you guys had voted on the last time for two specific schools, which was Sage Elementary and Adobe. We spray painted the areas that potentially could become a huge problem, like the Spring Creek High School entrance. And we're trying to mitigate those and preventative maintenance early, so it doesn't become a $350,000 project.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, how would the board like to proceed on item 2.7?
Move to approve 2.7.
Second.
All
Madam
right.
Chair,
There is some more language we kind of need in these kind
Oh,
of
do you?
bids.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry.
But thank you
if you
for
look
trying to
under
be brief.
administrative content, Dr. Byers, I appreciate your
Oh, is there a whole? Do you have? I don't have it on here.
Oh,
Mine didn't
you
print
probably
out.
just have to log back in.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I don't
I
have any-
move
It's a little
that the
longer.
board accept the best bid for FY 21 asphalt maintenance
24.
project submitted
24.
by 24.
24. Yep.
Asphalt maintenance project submitted by Superior Services, conditionally award the contract to that bidder, subject to the timely submission to the district legal counsel of all documents required by the instruction to bidders, including the signed contract, proof of required insurance, issued performance bond, issued payment bond, and completed project apprenticeship report.
Thank you. Does the maker of the second approve?
I approve.
Okay. All right, is there any other discussion? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. Item 2.8 is receipt, review, and possible permission to go out to bid for the reconstruction of the approach for Spring Creek High School.
Well, this particular project is just the front entrance of Spring Creek High School. I think it was indicative of the harsh winter that we had, but you guys see a number of $350,000, and that is very high. My plan and the maintenance plan between Matt Stocky and myself and CJ, it's not just to re-asphalt it. So what we want to do is we want to take that asphalt out, replace the base, put in HDPE pipe. It's corrosion resistant. Some of the other stuff has galvanized, just take an approach to where we're not revisiting this in 3 years. So, yeah.
Isn't this an area that that floods a lot? I mean, right, this entrance area builds up with water quite a
It does
bit.
build up with water. So this is engineering designs to get that water out from underneath that roadway. And two, it's a main travel way for all of the buses that serve the two schools.
Well,
So
yeah.
it's a heavy traffic area.
And the
as well.
students and the parents and.
Sorry. Has anybody looked into like directional drilling to install drainage pipe and stuff like that without having to completely rip everything up? Being able to pave over what is already there and fix it and have someone come in and directional drill drains?
I think we
in?
could.
Drain-
It's just the material that's underneath there. We want to remove and get a material in there that will let the water drain out as well. So it's what we have is a planter garden in the middle that has water going into it as well to water those trees. We want to condense that area and reduce the amount of water that's going underneath the asphalt. But yes, that would be a good opportunity to use a directional drilling solution. In this case, we want to take that material out. And we thought about that too, but we've already done this project, 5 years ago, and I don't want to have anybody revisit this in 5 more years. So.
Can I just ask, what would the cost difference be between the 350,000 to completely redo it versus
I would say half.
half?
However, we know that what's there is not useful and it's just going to continue to be a problem, right? Okay. Any other questions from the board? How would you like to proceed?
Dr. Byers?
Oh, I think I have messed up motions all night. Thank you.
I'm killing it.
Madam Chair, move to grant permission to go out to bid for the reconstruction of the approach for Spring Creek High School.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion?
Briefly, the CIP that we passed earlier included a $500,000 price tag to this. This is 350. Is there a preference or which one takes precedence?
This is an estimate based off of an engineer's proposal. At the time of I'll be brutally honest, at the time of the capital improvement plan, when we were building this, we did not have those projected numbers. So.
Thank you.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the motion carries. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Stephen. All right, item 2.9 is receipt
Thanks, Sam.
review and discussion of proposed changes to policy JBA, minimum age required for kindergarten and first grade. Just as a reminder, this is a non-action item.
Yeah, my apologies. We did not include background information on this, but I will quickly let you know that the reason for the change is because it says it in the legal section at the top of the red line document. But there was Assembly Bill 65 from this last legislative session changed the age requirement start dates. And so this document very simply reflects what the new bill says. And we didn't ad lib anything else in there. It's all just straight out of the new bill. Out of the bill.
All right, any questions on this one?
I do have some, and I'm so sorry.
Go ahead. And
Not
just a
that-
reminder, it's a non-action, so
Yep,
you can
yep.
question and request and all those other
Just
things.
thoughts, not that I would deign to question that about a legislature. However, Section 1 basically just allows somebody who attended pre-kindergarten an extra 28 days to enter kindergarten, but only for the 23-24 school year.
Yes.
Okay. So in looking at the language, Section 1 says the child must not be admitted to kindergarten if a child is not 5 years of age. So should we add, except that a child who is enrolled?
Oh,
Because we've got two conflicting paragraphs, one that says you must not, and one that says, well, if you attended pre-kindergarten. And so I just don't want that to be an issue. So perhaps Mr. Sawyer and his wisdom can look at that. I know he's already looked at it, but
Yeah.
I just see both of those as a conflict.
right. The second paragraph in section 1 is meant to provide like a caveat or an exception to that rule for this year. And it's not phrased as an exception. It's just phrased
Right.
as conflicting statements. So yeah, we can put
Perfect.
something there. Yep.
Thank you. Section 3 deals with a student who turns 6 on August 1st or any date prior to can be, for lack of a better word, held back by their parents, though must enter first grade the following year unless they are assessed as not developmentally prepared, in which case they enter kindergarten. I believe I've read that right. However, section 4C, which is subsequent to that, and then says, here's where you have to go, only details what happens to a parent or to a student held back from kindergarten. Do we need to address a student held back from first grade?
You lost me, Matt.
I know, and it took me a long time to read through this at midnight last night too. I'll visit with you on that individually.
Sure.
Is there a reason on section 4 that we struck the letter C? We have A and B. That next paragraph, is that going to be part of B?
I say it looks like it because it just says
I
it's
think it's
the
meant
if.
to be part of B. Yeah.
Okay. And then section 7, what does that mean? Did we previously allow kids to not, or students, sorry, was there previously an option to not send students to school part of the year? And again, I realize this was verbatim from the legislature. It didn't make sense to me that we're saying you have to go all school year. Well, that kind of goes without saying, doesn't it?
I think that this is language that was sort of talked about before I think the age use, so starting that school year, so not this coming school year, but the following one, because right now 7 is the mandatory age that a student must begin going to school. And I think that makes it so that 6 is now the mandatory age.
Okay.
I think that's what that's getting at.
Okay. The only other thing that caught me on 7 is it says that, well, except as otherwise provided by law, parents as a group of a child 6 to 18 shall send the child to a public school during all time. The public school is in session. What about a private school? I get that a charter school is a public school, but a private school is not a public school. This makes it sound like we're saying, nope, private schools can't exist in Elko County now.
I think that fits into except as otherwise provided by law.
Great, thank you.
Because law allows them to
Just
do that.
wanted to make sure that wasn't perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
And I realize it's non-action. I just wanted to get those out. And I'll visit with you on the really muddied one.
Yeah, that'll just be easier to look at, and maybe I explain it and you're like, oh yeah, or maybe we need to add some words.
Any other questions or guidance on this item? All right, seeing none, we will bring this back with those recommendations. If you have other recommendations or questions, please direct them to Mr. Anderson. We'll move on to item 2.10, receipt, review, and discussion of proposed changes to policy GDB.02, substitute teachers, licensed employees.
Thank you. This is simply changing language to adjust to the fact that we will now be operating on a 4-day schedule. So it formalizes the fraction that'll be used to calculate substitute pay based off of the fact that we don't have 184 school days anymore. We have 154. So that's it. Anything else on that one, Cody? Or Cody loved it. He didn't have to walk to the microphone.
All right, any questions from the board on this one?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yep, go ahead.
I'm assuming now that we've opened this, we'll be able to put this in the same format as our other policies.
Yep.
Perfect.
We'll make sure it
And
looks the same way.
Great. To clarify, if a substitute, now that we're looking at the policy, if a substitute teacher is teaching less than 10 days, they're receiving just over half of a certified teacher's salary. But if they teach 10 days or more, they then receive the above amount for 5 days, and then they receive the pay level of a beginning certified teacher. Am I understanding that right? Okay, thank you.
right,
It's,
any other?
it's the difference between a regular kind of intermittent sub versus a long-term substitute. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
I rest.
All right. Any other questions on that one? All right, again, we will see that one. If you have other questions or guidance, please refer that to Mr. Anderson. We'll move on to item 2.11, receipt of quarterly update reports.
All right, Stephen, we got 2 updates for you today.
Today, a few of the projects that we approved earlier, jackpot fire alarm, we're at about 10% completion. All the permitting's done. They're on site right now. The project's going well. A lot of the invasive things are happening right now. And the rest of it can be done when school's in session. West Wendover fire alarm, they're at about 35% completion right now. Progress is going well on that one too. Adobe Middle School boilers, both of the boilers are set on their new pads. They've got the gas ran to it, and we've got some controls and electrical, just some minor things to touch up on it, and will be expected to be completed in the next week or so. The yearly fire alarm testing, we've got a few schools left on that. It's something that we do every year, go through the schools and just make sure all the fire alarms work. 75% complete on that. Food science building, all the construction documents have been sent to the county. We're hoping to receive those by the end of the week and hopefully start bidding or going out to bid at the end of August. And then school violence prevention program, we're kind of at the initial phases of that. That kind of just entails all the emergency call outs, cameras. We've got some delays that we've kind of encountered, and that's just receiving on parts, some of this electrical equipment and circuit boards. They seem to be short still, but we're taking a proactive approach. We're still pulling wire through some of the schools. We've got Elko High School pretty much pulled. We've got all the parts for jackpot combined, and everything's going well. We're about a month behind the schedule on that one. Yeah.
Any questions for Stephen? All right, thank you for the update.
Okay, so we've been pretty busy this summer getting things ready for school again. We've got new Wi-Fi devices in every single classroom, got them up and ready to go. So they're ready for next school year. The Wendover fiber project is complete. The Wells fiber project is complete. The Chromebook rotation is complete for next school year. Then the projects that we have in the works, Flagview is the fiber for Flagview. They actually ran the fiber into this building for Flagview today. And they said that project is expected to be completed by November 3rd. And then the other big project we have coming up is we got to replace our Sonic wall, which is the network's firewall and content filter. That is going to bring the entire network down for why we do that swap over. So I'm going to shift this a couple of my guys' schedules over, and we'll do it on Friday when nobody's around, and we'll get it done before school starts. That's all I got. Any questions, concerns, comments?
Any questions for Mac?
Thanks, Mac.
That's all. That was not just all. That was a lot. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 3.1, our consent agenda.
Move to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and that motion carries. Item 4.1 is report from our NASB director.
All right, not much to add, except that I just got some information. I'll send out a copy of that to get out to you via email, but it's on the, there's a meeting and then training on September 8th and 9th. The training that would apply if anybody wants to go is on September 9th at Tuscany Suites in Las Vegas. it's on multi-tiered system of supports and action and conflict resolution and de-escalation skills training. So there's a little bit of information on that if anybody wants to attend, and I will send that out tonight. I would have sent it earlier, but my charger's at home. So keeping up with the agenda here.
Jeff, any chance that that's going to be provided Zoom or otherwise remote?
No, and the reason, and I covered this before, but the reason they give me on that was that because so many of the things are interactive and hands-on, we do a lot of, get up out of your chair, even switch seats, kind of real interactive type training. And that's really hard to do over Zoom links. They are looking at doing some stuff. And we're going to talk about that some more at the annual conference, in fact, as to which direction we would like to see some of those trainings go. And I know that they'd had it in the future, but I don't have anything set right now as far as doing Zoom for those particular reasons.
All right, any questions for Jeff? All right, as always, Jeff, thank you for the work you do as our NASB director. Item 4.2 is items from board members. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to.
Madam Chair, I apologize.
Go ahead. Sorry, I couldn't see you, Susan. I apologize. Go ahead, Susan.
Just something that I had written down, but Brooke had mentioned as well. Sometime soonish, I think we need to put together a new evaluation for our superintendent based on the goals we developed and just to revamp it somewhat, because I don't think I'll leave it as that. But only if the rest of you agree with that. Same with, I would like to see a list of goals from Superintendent Anderson of what he'd like to work on for the year, and then some updates on those throughout the year. And once again, that's only if the rest of you think that's worthy of doing.
All right, thank you, Susan, for those suggestions.
Madam Chair, I apologize, Stephen, I was a bit remiss on item 2.04. One of the things that I meant to bring up was that there were some projects that we have dropped off of that list, that we've already done some things on it. And I understand that there may be a less legislatively required list that we may be putting together at some point in the future. And I just want to make sure that folks know in the community that just because it's not on that list, though we've already devoted resources, it's not because we've shelved the project and it's never coming back. So I appreciate the discussion I had with you earlier on that, and look forward to being able to have a comprehensive needs list and perhaps something that says these are projects that may be ready to go when we get funding. So thank you.
We'll put that together and Kayla can come up with some data to come up with.
Great. Thank you for having that.
All right, anything else on item 4.2? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 5.1, our superintendent's report.
That's me. So just a few things to keep you aware of. I won't spoil the surprise of talking about the bills too much, but just there are multiple bills I will reference tomorrow at the Republican town hall meeting. And but so you're aware there are a couple that impact us pretty immediately, but for a bill that passes on July 1st, and then there's things that have to happen before August 1st, and we still haven't received guidance from either ND or the state on what to do with those brandly new passed bills. So we're waiting on guidance very specifically for SB 231, which has as it pertains to salary increases for most staff in the district, and then AB 519, which is the rural assistance thing I talked about earlier, and then the Owyhee school appropriation money. So still seeking guidance before we move too far ahead on that. But on that note, despite the fact that we don't have the funding that has come in yet because that has not been established, still we are moving forward with meetings with the tribal council and tribal representation on potential plans and talking to design firm and working on just trying to be as ready as possible when that time comes, because as much money as that sounds like, and as long as 3 years sounds like, getting that project done in 3 years and with the amount of money that's available is going to be, it's going to be a stretch to have that done in that amount of time. Hawaii is a remote location, and there's going to be a lot of efforts to try to get that done in that 3-year time frame. So we're doing our best to just be, I think even in the last 2 weeks, this will be we're having a meeting with them tomorrow. So that'll be 2 meetings in 2 weeks, and we're just going to continue to be there. And then thanks to Chairman Mason, who's the chair of the tribal council out there, he participated in our last capital improvement committee meeting and lending his voice. And so the partnership's going well there, and we'll give you updates as that project starts to have things to talk about. We recently had our next strategic plan action meeting. So we've our strategic planning committee was much bigger before. And so now it's in the hands of district leadership to decide on specific initiatives and actions that address the pillars and items that you saw on the accepted strategic plan. So we detailed those out. There's a lot of them. Some of them we're already begun on and we're doing well on, and others we got to get started. So just letting you know, the strat plan isn't done and just sitting in a Google Drive somewhere. We're working on it, and there's a template form that you will start to see as part of quarterly updates, because so each initiative is going to have an owner, usually a director, but could be me, could be Sarah Jolly, could be Heather Steele, just depending on what people need to take ownership of a certain initiative. And that template will be filled out to detail what we're doing, how it addresses the pillar in the strategic plan and the actions we talked about. And then when they give quarterly updates, they'll be sure to tell you how we're doing with those initiatives and where we're at with them and the successes we're having. So when you start to see those, that's what they are. And I'll remind you when we see the first one, but we're working on them. The goal is to have those initiatives kind of all mapped out before we start the school year. And not all of them will be implemented immediately in the school year. Some of those initiatives are 2-3 year endeavors, and others are pretty quick and already happening now. So just felt like it was worth mentioning to you that we're still doing stuff with the strategic plan. Yeah, if anyone wants to join me at the Republican Town Hall meeting tomorrow, you're welcome to. Appreciate Mr. Hoffman extending the invitation, and looking forward to being there, and encourage anyone else, not just about school related bills, but there were a lot of bills that got passed in this legislative session, and they affect people in lots of different ways. And it's important to be well informed about how those impact us. So thanks for holding such an information session. Looking forward to it. I was able to publicly celebrate some successes Elko County School District has had in the mental wellness department. I was asked to attend and present at a kind of like a national superintendent forum, and specifically about our efforts in the mental wellness realm, from be it our suicide prevention efforts that we're engaging in, Hope Squad, our SEL curriculums we're adopting, our collaboration with Elko Federal Credit Union, with NGM. I'm leaving things off, but it was a nice long list, and it was a good little tip of the cap to Elko County School District. It was a lot of people were very impressed at the efforts we're doing, and I appreciate you as a board prioritizing that in our strategic plan and prioritizing that as efforts that we need to make for the betterment of our student and staff wellness and mental health. So it was, yeah, sometimes it's easy to think that things are all bad and they're not going well, but several national entities are noticing our efforts, and you may not see it in the newspaper, but I'm being asked about it. So we're doing a good job. We have a ways to go. I want to acknowledge that. I think the reason we're doing a good job is because there was a lot to do, and we're getting after it. So appreciate all the efforts from everyone who's been a part of that. And then one more hooray, and I will be done, is Genevieve Demick, who is our FCCLA advisor over at Spring Creek High. I think she was the new advisor of the year or something. She received an award this year for that. She had students who went to the National Leadership Conference and came home with some, I was going to say hardware. I don't know if there was a recognition of their job well done. And so I just want to acknowledge those kids by name. And of course, I already mentioned Ms. Demick, but in the event called Event Management, my best shot with these names, Nyla Colgan, Delaney Hipwell, and Eve Valdez received silver at the national conference. In the event of food innovations, Haley Appleman and Grayson Demick also received silver. In the event of hospitality, tourism, and recreation, Ruby Cortez, Suzette Lara, and Nisa Romo received bronze. And in the repurpose and redesign event, Addison Fuller and Jaylee Ramon, bronze. So congrats to Spring Creek High's FCCLA students for going to the nationals event, representing our school well, our school district, their school and our school district well. And Genevieve was effusive in her praise of her students and just how well they represent our families. So always love to recognize, even during the summer, our kids are going out there and achieving. And so we're real proud of them. And that's it for me.
Awesome. Thank you. Any questions or guidance for Mr. Anderson?
To say we had a bunch of Wendover kids out there at the FCCLA nationals there in Denver too. I don't have an update, but I do want to recognize them. I know they went there and had a good time. I'm glad to see all of the different schools participate in that because that is really good for the future career and community leaders. So I'm happy to see that going well.
Awesome. All right, we'll move on to item 6.1, approval of accounts payable.
Chair, move to approve the accounts payable.
Thank you. Hopefully we can take a second. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion, a second. Now, is there any discussion, abstentions, or disclosures? No,
I'm abstaining from voting if a family member owns one of these companies.
Thank you.
I would like to disclose that I have a close family relative working for Wells Rural Electric, but I will not be abstaining from voting.
Okay. And I will also disclose that I have a family member who is employed by Wells Rural Electric, but I will also not be abstaining. Is there any discussion on the accounts payable or questions? All right, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor of approval, please say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? And we have one abstention and the chair votes aye and the motion carries. Item 7.1 is final opportunity for input from the public. Is there anyone who wishes to make a comment? All right, seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
7:10. Almost 2 hours long.